Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Sorry we're encountering a little bit of technical difficulties. The YouTube is not quite functioning, but audio is on point. So we're going to go and ask folks if you can please speak directly into the mic so that we can capture your commentary. On that note, we'll call to order our Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, May the 20th, 2025 at 6:36 p.m. And I'll go ahead and ask my commissioner if she can lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. And if it's okay, if I just want to make sure I welcome our new commissioner, Mayra Castaneda. Thank you for joining us and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
As well as I think we have a new director of community development. Would you like to maybe introduce yourself? I don't think folks have had a chance to meet you. It's your first meeting. Maybe just.
Thank you, Chairman. Gabriel Perez, your new community development director. And so happy to be here. First meeting. It's taken me a few weeks to actually get to the Planning Commission meeting, so it's good to meet you all today. So I'm new to the city. Just my history. The first time I was out here, I used to work for the Cesar Chavez Foundation when I graduated from college a long time ago. And I was working here at Southgate. And so I always thought it would be a great community to work for in the future. I was recently community development director for the city of Coachella for about 4 years, but spent some time in Riverside, San Clemente, La Quinta as well. So happy to be here. We have a great team on the planning team. I'm here to help you, so if you ever have any questions about anything going on in the city, I'm here to serve you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Southgate. Roll call.
Chairperson Osaeta,
Present.
Commissioner Castañeda,
Present.
Commissioner Prieto,
Present.
Commissioner Ruiz.
Present.
I, Kimberly Hernandez, Housing Assistant, certify that a true and correct copy of the foregoing meeting agenda was properly posted on May 15, 2025, 72 hours prior to the scheduled meeting as required by law. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54952.3, disclosure of compensation for meeting attendance by the Planning Commission is $125 per meeting. Consent calendar, Planning Commission minutes for March 18, 2025. The Planning Commission will consider approval of the minutes for the regular Planning Commission meeting of March 18, 2025.
Could I get a motion?
This is Liz. I so move to approve the minutes. I second.
Commissioner Castañeda,
Yes.
Commissioner Prieto,
Yes.
Commissioner Ruiz,
Yes.
Chairperson Osaeta.
Yes.
Motion passes. Open session item, item number 1, zone change from IF to M3 for a property located at 9313 Rayo Avenue, and finding that this is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, PL 25-146. Based on the evidence presented, staff recommends that the Planning Commission consider 1, adopting resolution number 2025-06, recommending City Council approve a request to change the zoning designation of a property at 9313 Rayo Avenue from industrial flex to heavy manufacturing, and adopt an ordinance amending the citywide zoning map of Title 11 of the SGMC. Number 2, find the recommendation to the City Council for an amendment to the zoning map is not subject to California Environmental Quality Act review because it is not an approval as defined in California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Section 15352, but rather a recommendation and therefore does not commit the city to any definite course of action regarding the zoning code amendment. Yeah, give me a second.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and Planning Commissioners. So this item before you, we have the applicant, which is Tom Wong, with Commercial Development Resources, Inc., on behalf of Mr. C's Towing and Fubar Properties Limited Liability Company. And this project proposal involves a request for a zone change, specifically to change the zoning designation of a portion of the property at 9313 Rayo Avenue from industrial flex to heavy manufacturing to match the current M3 or heavy manufacturing zoning designation of the remainder of the property. This slide before you shows an aerial image of the subject site and its surrounding context. The subject site is located, or it's bounded around this, or within this red outline. The site is composed of one parcel with two assessor parcel numbers, but it's legally just one parcel. Irregular shaped lot, as you can see on the aerial. And the parcel has a pretty wide frontage along Rayo Avenue. The site's located between Southern Avenue to the south and Firestone Boulevard to the north. Some of the surrounding uses involve or include a adult school that's owned by LAUSD, which is also operated as a maintenance facility site for the school district. To the south of the subject site, directly north of the subject property, is a vacant lot which is currently being developed into a off-street parking facility, which would be utilized by the nearby Amazon distribution center. Directly across the street, there's a metal recycling facility and other industrial uses to, or warehouse to the south of this metal recycler. So in general, there's predominantly industrial type uses along the Rayo Avenue corridor as you move along the street toward the north. So it's predominantly industrial. This is another aerial image from a different perspective, just to get more of the massings and the surrounding context of the street and adjacencies to the subject site. This is a parcel map which represents the subject property. As you can see, it has two assessor parcel numbers designated, but it stands as one legal parcel. These are some images representing the existing site conditions along the Rayo Avenue street. So on your top left, you have a view looking southwest from Rayo Avenue toward Southern and the horizon. On the top right is another view looking northwest along Rayo Avenue. And the image on the bottom left is another view along Rayo Avenue facing northeast toward Firestone Boulevard. And then a different view looking northeast along Rayo Avenue, looking towards Firestone on the bottom left. And then on the bottom right, you have another view looking southeast from Rayo Avenue. So all these images are within the proximity of the subject site, and many of those images, or all of them, you'll see a red metal fence, which is the subject site. So the subject site that we're talking about is within that proximity. Some background about the property. This site was formerly occupied by the Cooper Drum Company between 1941 and 1992, where they reconditioned and cleaned steel drums with chemicals, industrial chemicals, that is. And then after 1992, the site remained vacant for many years due to its contamination, and as this was designated as a Superfund site by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. EPA oversaw the partial treatment of the site, and over time has imposed land use restrictions due to its contamination. And in 2013, the property, they conducted a lot line adjustment, previous ownership for an unknown reason, and hence the reason why two assessor parcel numbers exist for the subject property. In 2015, the city updated its zoning code, and with that, it also amended the zoning map. Through that update, the zoning map, or the zoning code, introduced a new zoning district, which is the Industrial Flex, also known as the IF district within the city. And it affected the subject property in that it created a split zoning condition where the rear portion of the subject site was designated IF, and the front portion facing the street maintained an M3 designation. In December 2024, the city issued a temporary certificate of occupancy to allow for a towing and impounding yard on the portion of the site that's currently designated M3, which is the front portion of the property, fronting Rayo Avenue. And this use is allowed by right according to our city's zoning code regulations. And the temporary, or also known as the TCO, is valid until November of this year. Now, the rear portion, which is currently designated IF, is currently unused by the applicant. It's vacant, and they are seeking to expand their operations across the entire site in the near future. To do so, the request for the zone change is needed for the rear portion to allow for that expansion. So by designating the rear portion of the property into an M3, a zoning designation would allow for the tow yard operations to occupy that rear portion of the property. In this particular project, the requirements for the requested zone change involve the following. So City Council, Planning Commission, or an applicant may submit a request to do a zone change or a zoning map amendment. In this case, the applicant was the designated person, or the person that initiated this process. And through the process, a public hearing needs to be held before the Planning Commission, which is where we are tonight. And the Planning Commission would adopt a resolution making a recommendation to the City Council, whether in favor or for an approval or a denial. Subsequently, the City Council will hold its own public hearing to consider the recommendation, and if they approve the ordinance, or they approve the zone change, they will adopt an ordinance to finalize the zone change or the zoning map amendment. So to be more specific, for this request, the applicant is requesting the zone change, and as part of that, an ordinance to amend the citywide zoning map. The subject site's located at 9313 Rayo Avenue within the Rayo Industrial District of the General Plan, Sub-Area 2. The rear portion of the property needs to be rezoned from IF to M3, and the purpose is to align the zoning designation of the rear to the front portion so that the site can be utilized more effectively, whether currently or in the future for any other prospective user. Part of this request is solely for the zone change, so no site or tenant improvements are part of this project. In this slide before you, it shows the existing conditions of the zoning designations. As you can see on the left, the area shaded purple is the rear portion of the site, which the applicant is proposing or requesting to redesignate into M3. And then the front portion is currently M3. So the resulting zone change would, or the result of the zone change would be this condition here in the slide before you, where the entire site would be designated M3. And now this slide is another representation of the current zoning designations of the subject site and other properties within the vicinity. So on your top left, the subject site's located within this portion of the map. And on the right, you'll see that this is the proposed zone change and what it would result in should the zone change be approved. So it's merely a cleanup of the zoning map, given that currently the zoning designations don't follow the property boundaries, and this cleanup would make effective use of the site. Here we have excerpts from the list of allowed land uses within the IF zone. It's not a comprehensive list, it's very lengthy, but we are representing some of the more common uses that are permitted within the IF zone, just for context here. So the IF zone allows for certain residential uses by right, and other uses such as schools, colleges, libraries, and galleries. And then there's other uses that would require a discretionary review within that zone, involving vehicle services or recycling facilities or things of more intensive uses. There's also commercial uses that are allowed within the zone by right, including offices, clinics, or retail and restaurants. And then the zone also allows for industrial or production uses, which are more on the lighter or less intensive part of the industrial spectrum, including light manufacturing, research and development, and warehousing, subject to a conditional use permit in that instance. And then on the other hand, we have uses that are allowed within the M3 zone. This is an excerpt from the table 11.21-4, which pertains to the heavy manufacturing zone. So residential uses are not allowed, with the exception of emergency shelters in some instances. And the zone allows for some educational, civic, and public uses through a discretionary review process for the most part. And then it does allow for office uses and research and development types of activities. It also allows for commercial uses such as general retail, like your big box retailers, some animal services and restaurants, and vehicle repairs and vehicle-oriented uses, including the tow yard and impound lot, warehousing and general manufacturing, and lastly, recycling types of facilities. Now, it's staff's determination that the proposed zone change is consistent with the general plan. The zone change, in fact, supports the community's long-term vision for orderly development. Staff's also determined that it will align with the land use designations with current operational needs and ensure the compatibility with the adjacent industrial uses within the vicinity. Staff's also determining that the Planning Commission's action and making a recommendation is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act due to the fact that it's not an approval. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find that the recommendation to the City Council for an amendment to the zoning map is not subject to CEQA, given that the recommendation is not an approval, and adopt a resolution recommending an approval of the request for a zone change, specifically the change to the zoning designation of property at 9313 Rayo Avenue from IF to M3, and adopt an ordinance amending the citywide zoning map accordingly. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have the applicant's team in the audience as well.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to say a few words?
Thank you so much for all the chair people and commissioners and city planning department that's been supportive of our efforts to rezone this. Basically, the back portion is a smaller portion of the site, and we want to just make it all one zone, M3. And we will, our plans are to beautify the front of the wall and to, add more greenery, but that's going to be forthcoming after we're able to get the zone change.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mike Welsh, Mr. C's Towing, and I came tonight to answer any questions that y'all might have. And we do have a short video clip that illustrates what the front of the facility will look like once the beautification is done, including green wall, trees, ground cover, and that kind of thing. I don't know if we have the ability to show it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but if you have questions, we can show it to you.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions at this point, we're here.
Thank you very much. Any questions, commissioners, at this point? No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Yeah. Commissioner Reese?
Actually, and this might be answered by the applicant. I know there was a concern about barbed wire. I did drive by the property today, and I don't know if I remember seeing that today, but that was one thing that's also come up within some of the comments during council meetings, concerns about illegal use on the property, and or storage of truck as a truck yard facility, and I never really heard about what the resolution was regarding that.
So we are currently storing vehicles there, but we do have permission from the city with a temporary permit.
Right.
And so we've never stored anything on the property ever without the city's permission and permitted. Secondary, we don't have any barbed wire on the property whatsoever and have no intention of using any barbed wire.
Right. Yeah, I didn't remember seeing any. But
There is barbed wire on the front of your facility, the front of the fence.
On our facility?
Yeah, towards the front of the property on Rio, towards the containers on the right-hand side and the left-hand side. Board.
Barbed wire is on the left-hand side. It's the adjacent tenant.
Yeah, it's not ours.
It's on that kind of metal picket fence on the wall that goes kind of west. Okay,
Sorry.
sorry. So the barbed wire is actually on the property to the south of our property.
Yeah, you can see it in that picture.
If you zoom in on that fence in front of that white, top right where that white van is.
So,
Container dividing the front of the front of the property?
no, there's no containers.
No. There's,
On the front of the property?
On the north edge of front of the property,
That's just to block people from.
like adjacent to the Amazon parking facility.
Oh, okay. The picture on the very bottom right illustrates that red on the far right that meets the block wall. That is a shipping container pushed up against from the inside of the yard to close the gap so people can't get in. But it's a temporary thing there. I didn't know it was there, I'm sorry. And then the barbed wire that you're seeing is the facility of the school to the left of us. There is no barbed wire on any of our fencing on the front of Rayo.
is that container your
Yes.
property? That has barbed wire?
It does?
Yes, it does.
I'm so sorry. I did not know that it had barbed wire on it. I know the fence doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry about that misunderstanding.
Commissioner Reese, that's been brought up several times by the community, the concerns around the barbed wire. And I know, Greg, you're about to step in and say that's not part of the conversation here. But
That
they
barbed
did
wire
bring that up, they did
Actually,
mention it.
that is true. I just wanted to remind everyone that as far as the use and the proposed changes, either removing barbed wire or what the fence looks like or things like that. That's actually the subject of a design review that is currently ongoing by the city. And those questions will be addressed, and if there's barbed wire in violation of city's zoning ordinances, those will certainly have to be taken down and replaced with something else. But for purposes of this meeting, we're more focused on the broad uses, zoning, IF versus the zoning M3. So it's not so much what is particularly happening there right now, but what will which use categories will be allowed, going forward?
I understand that, and the reason I bring up these questions is because I feel like as commissioners, we're very limited in when we can express our opinions regarding these projects, because we do have to come up here with an open mind and with the questions and concerns we have. And so to me, that's, finding and changing the use is very important, figuring out why, which is one of my other questions, why this particular parcel was left out. And I don't feel like I got to the bottom of that. But changing a parcel designation will have a lasting effect on the property's use. I understand. And on the other hand, I understand the limited potential for the property because it is a Superfund site, because it is contaminated. And so I have to, say and disclose that I did look at the DTSC case on the site and know that the property owner did work with DTSC to redevelop the site. So I do admire and applaud that effort to work with DTSC to change the configuration of the vapor extraction system and the monitoring well system. And I'm happy to see that there's still remediation happening on the site. And because it's still contaminated, I feel like that contamination very much limits the use of the property. And I don't see how having a parcel in the back can be used for any light industrial uses. And that's my other question too. When I looked at the city code for light industrial flex, there was wording that kind of said something to the effect of it being flex because it should be kind of tend to the adjacent use, the adjacent manufacturing use. Why wouldn't a tow truck kind of fit in that description?
You're saying why wouldn't a impound lot or tow yard be fitting within the industrial flex zone?
Or at least just the flex, just part of that designation, that it should be flexible enough for it to be used with any adjacent use.
I'm not sure. This is, again, part of the 2015 zoning code update when they introduced that new zoning designation. Not sure why they excluded tow yards, but what I can say to the effect of, identifying the purpose of the IF zone, it was created to create a transition between what would be the residential or commercial uses into a manufacture or budding manufacturing zones or uses, something that it serves as a transition space, even within the uses. So the IF zone does allow for those light manufacturing uses to transition.
And it's limited to what is listed?
No. So it's the list that you're seeing in the slide, it's only excerpts. So in our zoning code, we have the comprehensive list.
But it is limited to the comprehensive list?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
You can feel free to sit down. I'd hate for you to just stand up there the whole time.
I just wanted to say that the barbed wire will be removed tomorrow.
Okay. Thank
And I'm
you.
really sorry about the misunderstanding with that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And yes, so
Can I add something real quick, just for transparency reasons? Staff will be reporting out on some of the concerns that we brought up at the last meeting, specifically around the fencing and things of that nature that were posed by the community. So John is scheduled to report out on that during the staff reports. So-
Gotcha.
So hopefully that will answer all the questions in regards to the concerns that don't apply to this respective zone change. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure I don't want to disregard your concerns, because I know those are the concerns of the community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the other question I had was regarding CEQA. I know that it doesn't apply because we're only making a recommendation, but if this does pass through the commission as an approval, or not an approval, as a recommendation, does council then have to go through CEQA for that change?
When the council takes action to amend the zoning code, that is usually considered a project under CEQA. So unless there is an applicable exemption to that, then at that point, yes. If the council elects not to make the zone change, then there's no action and it's not a CEQA. If they elect that they do want to make the zone change, then if there's not a readily available exemption, then the zone change couldn't happen at that meeting. It would have to wait until the city goes through the CEQA process to so that the council can then consider the environmental effects of this. One interesting thing I noted when Rodrigo was going through the permitted uses, as the property is zoned right now, the property owner could by right put a child care center at the back of his property and continue to operate the towing yard at the front, which is one of the reasons that I think the city likes to avoid having these split zoning. But so if the concern is not wanting to increase the M3 areas in the city, this might be a situation where you would consider whether or not you might want to actually add some more square feet of M3 versus the existing condition that you've got right now. But again, it's not my decision, it's your guys' decision.
Quick question, do you have any questions on this side? Okay, quick questions for staff, and I think in the, let me just, because I think this will help. I always say, this is your world, you're the subject matter expert, so could you, I know in your presentation you referenced the ordinance to amend citywide zoning map, so if we recommend this, it clearly goes to city council, that won't just impact that respective area, would it impact any other areas in the city?
In this case, it would only impact the subject property.
Okay. And then, right, I was noticing when you're looking at the maps, and thank you for the presentation, there was a current IF zoning, was that influenced by the school property next door? Currently? The educational institution next door?
I'm not following which,
So there is one where it's the IF, the current IF map, the current use, I think it was attachment 3. One more down, keep going.
would
Yeah,
be
that
it?
one there, yes. On the right-hand side is a proposed rezoning, right? On the left, it's what it currently is, right?
Correct.
The IF. So that's not impacted by the educational kind of institution next to it?
No.
No, okay. And then another quick question, I know it was referenced in regards to the temporary certificate of occupancy. Like, what's the process to obtain a TC?
Well, maybe our manager can elaborate on that, but I'll just kind of speak briefly on the process. So, depending on the land use that's being proposed for a subject property, some uses are allowed by right. For example, the tow yard. Any business that would want to operate in the city needs to apply for a zoning clearance to obtain a business license. Through that process or preliminary process of obtaining a zoning clearance, the planning division determines that the use is allowable, in this case by right, so we provide the zoning clearance. And there's a series of steps that happen after the zoning clearance, so other departments are involved, and ultimately it's the building department that issues either building permits together with a business license whenever warranted, or they issue a what's called the certificate of occupancy when the space or the site is ready to be occupied and a license is ready to be issued. So I don't know all the details that go behind the requirements for the building department, but the first step, it's really planning division determining whether the use is allowable, and if it's something that does not require a discretionary review. And in this case, the example is that it was allowed by right, so the business was able to move forward through the process.
Is there a length for that temporary certificate of occupancy?
Again, I don't know all the details, but usually it's like a time period, several months. And the building official or the building department, they determine the time frame.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Liz.
I did have a couple of questions, and some of them are related to the current use, so the applicant might be able to answer them. But one of the questions I had before this meeting to staff was regarding the surface pavement on the property, and from reading the materials from DTSC, it sounds like the property was recently repaved, and that's a concern for me because of the storage of cars that might come leaky. And so I was pleased to hear from planning staff that that's something they're considering with the permits, having some sort of runoff plan in place. And so I'm wondering, and I couldn't tell from the aerial view whether the whole property was repaved with asphalt, and whether there's drainage to contain any of that runoff.
Okay, so what I know right now for sure is that we have not done any paving work. There is currently asphalted surface on the property. It's dilapidated, and the EPA, when we contacted EPA to ask them if they would be willing to approve our use, they said yes, but under certain conditions. So one of their conditions is that we repair the asphalt that's existing and slurry it, and then re-slurry it like every 24 months to keep it sealed tight. So when those vehicles do leak, it's a two-part process, basically. They want us to protect the dirt the way that it is right now. The remediation process is pretty much completed, with the exception of they are going to come in and remove and replace soil. And it could be the entire yard, but they're going to do it at about 12 to 15,000 square feet at a time. So what they wanted from us was for us to repair and slurry the property and keep the slurry in very good condition every 24 months, redoing it so nothing can penetrate. And that would protect the ground.
Got it.
Yeah.
And are most of the vehicles stored in that facility from Southgate? Is that where how does that work? Do they usually go there first, or
Yeah.
do they get sent, is there a chance that they get sent into other yards you have around the county?
Yeah. So right now, our primary yard in the city of Southgate is off of Mason Street. We've been there for a little over 20 years. And basically, the cars go straight to Mason. And after they've been there for a while, then we put some over there when we need the room at Mason
So they go to Rio as a secondary?
as a
option?
secondary at this point, yes.
Got it. And if, for whatever reason, we don't approve the zone change to that back parcel, how would that affect the storage of the cars? Would they get sent somewhere else, or?
It would really be a hardship on us. We would probably just keep them at Mason. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
And most of the cars are from the city of Southgate. Some are from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and a few are from the California Highway Patrol.
Oh, I see. Got it. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
A quick question, sir. You mentioned the EPA clearance, and you mentioned you've been in contact with EPA and
Yes,
they
sir.
provided direction on what needs to happen. Has that, is that included in this packet? Has that been submitted to the city? The letter or anything that,
No, everything, the only letter that we've given to the city from EPA was a letter basically stating that we're not allowed to dig on the site in any excess, basically. We're allowed to trench for water or electricity, and that's it. They don't want us to disturb the ground soil. That's the only letter I've submitted to the city.
Yeah. As I think you reference a lot of really great points in regards to like certain guidelines that Commissioner Reese has mentioned, and
Yes.
I think that would be really useful for it to be documented, or for the city to have that, so that there's some kind of accountability in regards to how the city navigates oversight of your location. I mean, this is more in line with your, your expertise, Commissioner Reese, but I think anytime you're able to get that documented, I think it sets a precedent on like what, it's clear expectations for all parties. Is that part of the temporary, what is it, the TCO?
No,
No.
no.
Staff?
Well, just to clarify, we're looking at the site improvements independently, and through that review process, we take all those factors into consideration. Although a project would be reviewed administratively, it still goes through the same hoops in terms of compliance with CEQA or other outside agencies.
And I wanted to highlight those environmental concerns because they have been brought up by the community. And just to clarify and speak from my own experience, noting that it's great to see the tenant working with the regulatory agency doing the oversight, because I can say that I've worked at sites where that hasn't happened, and remediation equipment gets damaged, and it just sets these projects back. And as you know, Southgate has 3 Superfund sites, and it's very important for us to get these sites cleaned up because they are next to our water sources. So
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess maybe at least my last question for staff is, when you're looking at making a recommendation from the M3 to the industrial flex, is the kind of like what else is factored into the equation in regards to a community benefit from having this type of change? Is that factored in regards to like long-term plans for that respective area? I know in this case, it's really more about kind of cleaning up the zone, but why M3 as opposed to just keeping it as industrial flex?
Sure. So first thing we do is refer to the city's general plan and make sure that the zone change will be consistent with the city's overall vision. So that's the guiding principle there. We have in our general plan a really good idea of where the city wants to move forward in terms of these specific areas. So having looked at the general plan, we see that even the cleanup will still maintain consistency with the overall vision that was set years ago when they updated the general plan.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Prieto?
No, I don't have any additional questions. I think you guys asked everything and clarified.
Commissioner Castaneda?
No questions.
Thank you. Okay. You want to, public comment? Want to open it up to public comment? Anybody here that would like to give public comment? If so, if you can please line up to the left-hand side so we can expedite the process. You do have 3 minutes. We would ask you if you can please speak into the mic. There's a nice little button right in front of you. Make sure it turns green.
It's green.
And we're good to go. So thank you for your time.
Bill Baum, Business on Rail, 5328. And I think this proposal before the committee tonight is to align the zones is more efficient to help the property owner and the out at this time.
Good evening, Richard Lute, IRS Demo. We're actually building the Amazon lot right next door. I just wanted to point out that what's being requested now is not unique, it's not unusual. The current map is actually not correct as it shows, so our property, which is the upper two-tone, is actually part of what is now the Recycle City specific zone. So the zoning department, or the zoning plan has already been changed to put that in for our business because of what we're doing, the recycling and what have you. It just made sense to rezone that as a site-specific zoning plan. So this is not all that unusual, it's not that unique. And also, just because of the way that property was broken up by the zoning, there's not much you can do with the western part of that property with the M3 in front of it. It really kind of hamstrings that property to have that dual zone either way. So I would be in favor of that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next comment?
Good evening. Sil Gonzalez, 9500 Rayo, Southgate, California. I've been in the city for maybe 45 years. We chose to locate in Southgate because of the energy, the pro-business effect of the city council of the city. So I'm going to answer a few questions, especially you, Mr. Chairman. You said, what are the alternative uses? What can we do with it? Okay. I own the southeast corner of Rayo and Southern. We have been tracking this property. We have been trying to buy it. So I own a company called SG Realty Group. You know the houses by the park? We built all those. The houses on Southern, we built all those. The houses on Seville and Santa, we built all those. We built several warehouses in this city. So we looked at every vacant piece of property available. We are now developing in Oregon. We're now developing in Sacramento. But my home is Southgate. I am part of the community. I'm part of the Rotary Club. I'm part of those Little Leagues. These people here, you guys are really young, but these community people, we tackled and had to solve a lot of problems. Number one, what does Mr. C's bring to the community? Employment. Okay? Employment. Remember, we're changing a zoning that was screwed up back in 2015 anyway. Okay. Number two, it brings revenue to the city. You're looking about taxes, permits, fees. Revenue to the city needs, because we don't fill all of the employment spots that we have here. There's a lot of vacancies to balance our budget. Next thing is, where are we going? What's the alternative use? What can you put there? I have brought companies over that we wanted to build before Mr. C's bought it. We were trying to buy it. When IRS bought the Amazon, we were trying to buy it. We try to buy every vacant piece of property here in Southgate. So I'm going to ask you, what alternative use could you put there? And I've had companies that come, and what we're going to do. So I'm asking you, we're asking you to please consider this and look at these factors. I think what Ms. Rees brought up was very important, but that's handled through staff. And Southgate has a great staff. I know, because we try to get things done, and we go maybe a year, maybe 2 years. Your temporary operating permit is a wonderful thing, because then you know who's coming and who's not. So thank you very much. Appreciate you. And go Southgate.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comments? Do we have any emails?
I do have 2 emails that I'm going to summarize, and I'm passing out the non-summarized versions to the commissioners. First email is from Mr. Dominguez. He recommends that the commission approve a zoning change for the Rayo property from IF to M3 to align the entire property under one designation. The property is currently split zoned, and the change would allow the owner to use the full property legally and efficiently. The speaker believes that the change is reasonable, fair, and will not negatively impact surrounding businesses. They urge the commissioners to vote in favor. Second comment is from Maria Chavez. She is a Southgate resident, and she's urging the Planning Commission to prioritize the community's well-being over business interests when considering the proposed zoning changes. She expresses concern about the rapid setup of the business without apparent oversight and criticizes the negative impacts such as increased noise, traffic, and the construction of an unsightly wall. Chavez highlights the property's troubling history, including pollution and its designation as an EPA Superfund site, and notes that a nearby elementary school was closed due to contamination. She warns against exposing residents, employees, and students to hazardous conditions and urges the commission to consider public health and environmental safety before approving the zoning change.
Thank you.
So I think that considering the limitations in the land use and access to that part of the parcel, I agree with legal counsel that in essence downgrading that zoning designation really does or can pose a mix how do you say it? It can possibly lead to misuse of the property because it is contaminated, and limiting the use of that can mitigate that concern. And like I said before, the site, it has been a Superfund site. Cooper Drum isn't who's running the property right now. I believe it was vacant prior to this, right, since 2009, which does nobody any good. And considering, at least what I've seen, that there has been collaboration with DTSC in making sure that the remediation efforts aren't going to be slowed down or stopped in any way, I'm personally leaning towards recommending this change from manufacturing to, from industrial flex to manufacturing. And I know that there has been concerns about the rapid change. And for that, and I'll bring this up later, I think this is something that should come through this commission. The use of tow yards should be something that goes through commissions. It's my understanding that other cities do that, and I'm not really sure what the reasoning was behind that, so I would like to hear why it's different here in Southgate, and what would need to happen for something like that to go through planning and council, what the pros and cons are for that. So I don't know if anybody is ready to make any recommendation, but I would recommend to go with the staff recommendation.
Just one final comment. I think, as you're navigating the process, I think there are clearly the concerns around, the environmental factors comes into play. That's something that the community has been very passionate about in previous projects, and it finds itself kind of coming to the forefront here as well. Clearly, every situation is unique, and you have to factor in a lot of other details, and I appreciate that the applicant was here to provide guidance. I think there's more conversations to come in regards to that location itself, but based off of what's in front of us, to your point, Commissioner Reese, those are just maybe some things that we need to factor in as in regards to how does this, I think there's some limitations in regards to how do we can mediate any kind of future contamination. But that would require oversight from city staff. But those are my final comments. Do you have any?
I'm just going to add, we are concerned about the environmental factors, but this is a business that is already there and it's only expanding a little bit further. It's not like we're bringing a whole new, activity or a whole new company, or it's really just an expansion and recoding of an area that really doesn't really have much use. Like we said, would they be setting a daycare there? Absolutely not. So I really don't see a reason as to why not support the change and recoding.
Commissioner Prieto, any comments?
Just additional comment, just kind of piggybacking off of what most of you have talked about. Based on the evidence presented, I don't see any harm this affecting any of the surrounding businesses. Like we've mentioned, or like you mentioned, Myra, this is just a small expansion. It's nothing, it's something that will align with the remainder of the businesses. That's all.
Thank you. Did we get a motion?
This is Liz. I'll move to adopt resolution number 2025-6 and to approve a request to change the zoning, to recommend to approve the zoning designation at the property from industrial flex to M3, and to adopt an ordinance amending the citywide zoning map Title 11 of the Southgate Municipal Code, and find that the recommendation to the City Council for the amendment to the zoning map is not subject to CEQA because it's just a recommendation.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Castañeda?
Yes.
Commissioner Prieto?
Yes.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Yes.
Chairperson Osaeta?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Audience comments?
We did receive one in the email from Mr. Mario Dominguez. He's expressing deep frustration with Southgate City leadership, criticizing the City Council for prioritizing spending such as $9,000 on a police canine while neglecting essential infrastructure like the city's cyber systems. Recent council meetings, March 25th and May 13th, crashed due to the technical failures preventing public access to important presentations. The commenter compares Southgate unfavorably to neighboring cities like Downey and Cudahy, which have more reliable platforms like Zoom and YouTube. The overall message is just a call for better leadership and investment in services that directly benefit residents.
Thank you. City staff comments?
Yes, Chair Ozeta. Wanted to give you an update on planning activities and projects that went before the Planning Commission fairly recently. The first one is the Engle property over at 8530 Alameda Street. Planning Commission may recall that on March 18th, the Planning Commission upheld the director's determination in regards to a determination for legal nonconforming uses or nonconforming uses for that subject property, and a proposed zone change and general plan amendment. The Planning Commission cited or upheld the director's determination. It was an appeal, so the Planning Commission upheld the director's determination and also recommended denial of that zone change and general plan. And City Council conducted a public hearing on April 22nd. At that meeting, City Council was still discussing the project with the applicant, and so City Council eventually continued that meeting to the May 13th meeting. And at the May 13th meeting, City Council considered two appeals. The first one was an appeal of the Planning Commission's determination to side with the director in regards to a temporary use permit that was issued. And the second one was for an appeal for the director's determination for the legal nonconforming use. The third item was to consider the zone change / general plan amendment for that subject property. And there was actually a fourth item that the City Council considered, which was through the negotiations with the applicant. Ultimately, what happened at that May 13th meeting is that the City Council approved that settlement agreement with the applicant to close that facility. What the City Council decided was to give the applicant a year to, all the way to May 13th, 2026. The reason being is because the settlement agreement really guarantees the termination of that use, termination of all truck, trailer, and container storage, not only on the city side, but also on the county side. Commission may recall that the owner, Engel, owns both sides, both properties, one on the city side and the adjoining property on the county side, and access is only on Alameda Street. So that ensures the closure of both, or the termination of truck, trailer, and container storage on both sides of that. It also requires that the applicant have an air quality monitoring in terms of, and other environmental monitoring there. And it also gives time for the applicant to transition to a suitable use. So that settlement agreement was approved, and again, the termination date would occur on or before May 13th of 2026. The reason why the City Council approved that also is because there's a possibility of litigation there that would take years in order to close the facility, and would also potentially lead to a lot of money being spent by the city. So that was that case. The other project I want to report on is City Ventures, which is the 10130 Della Avenue. That was also heard by the Planning Commission on March 18th, where the Planning Commission approved the subdivision of one parcel into a 54-unit residential condominium development. After the Planning Commission approved that project, there was an appeal filed by Jose Morales on April 7th on behalf of Southgate Progress Partners. The appeal is based on a number of issues, one being the traffic and pedestrian safety near the Legacy High School. Another was in regards to the air quality and noise impacts. The third was in regards to soil contamination and site safety. And the fourth in regards to unusual circumstances and CEQA exception. There were concerns at the meeting about the K-rail barrier and access into that neighborhood to the south on Adela. And also there were talks about a public works condition in regards to that K-rail, condition number 60, which staff has been working with the applicant. And so Public Works is involved in that. That appeal, again, was filed, and City Council is looking to consider that appeal at their next meeting next week on May 27th. And also with that, the applicant did address some of those, the traffic and circulation and access issues in a letter that was presented to staff. That will be part of the staff report going to City Council. They also prepared a traffic report. So that's all being sent over to City Council next week. Mr. Palayo is working on that staff report. And again, that meeting will be on the 27th. Wanted to give you a report on the consultant selection. Planning Commission may recall that we've been discussing the warehouse use. There's a cap on warehousing use, which is 15,000 square feet, which limits any type of warehousing use in industrial areas. And so we're looking to hire a consultant, bring them on board to look at that requirement, possibly doing an ordinance amendment to consider a citywide ordinance to propose a broader definition for industrial uses, and particularly in relationship to warehousing and truck generating businesses. The other item is to address future transit centers. We know that Metro is looking to put in 2 new transit centers within our city. And so we'd like the consultant to study those adjoining properties and have some recommendations on how we can make some improvements. And the third item is in regards to commercial corridors, how we can better improve our commercial corridors so that when the improvements come in with the industrial uses and with the transit centers, that we have connections between several uses in our city, including those commercial uses. The other item is in regards to the one that you just heard tonight, Mr. C's 9313 Rail Avenue. This is one that the Planning Commission had mentioned at their last meeting. This has been, I guess, in talks with the applicant since, to my correct recollection, since last year. And we do know that as mentioned, the site is a Superfund site. It's being monitored by EPA, My understanding is EPA is having some staffing issues right now with new administration. So, but the applicant has been in contact with with EPA as of 2024, and EPA is supposed to be monitoring that site because it is on their list as a Superfund site. As mentioned earlier, vehicle towing and impounding is a use that's approved administratively. It's approved by right under our code. Our code says it's a permitted use, permitted as a primary use, subject to compliance with all the applicable code provisions. And Mr. Palayo had mentioned that a TCO was issued, or temporary certificate of occupancy, was issued back in December of last year. It expires in November of this year. The applicant will need to work with the EPA on some clearance items, and EPA does have certain restrictions for the use of the site being a Superfund site. So the applicant will have to work with them on that. The applicant did submit a site plan, and that site plan is being reviewed administratively per the code. It is by right, but it is subject to the requirements of our code. So we're reviewing that site plan review. That site plan will be distributed to different departments in our city, including public works, building and safety, and other departments within the city. We'll also be working with EPA to get their comments on that. We've already had several meetings with the applicant. We know that certain requirements will be required from public works, and planning also has requirements also. There are some issues or some questions about the fencing in the front. We do have a requirement in our code that that area needs to be landscaped. There has to be landscape screening between the wall and the street in the front. So again, we are working with the applicant on that, but that will all be done at the staff level. It's an administrative approval. With that, the only other thing that we would like to mention is, like to welcome our new commissioner, Mayra Castaneda, to the commission. She's appointed by Council Member Hurtado to replace Commissioner Labarin, who resigned earlier this year. We're also looking to possibly have a fifth commissioner at the next meeting, City Council, from what I understand. That's Council Member Del Pilar Avalos' appointment, and that's to replace Commissioner Perez, who also resigned fairly recently. And so that's that. Thank you.
Are you going to speak to the questions that the community asked specifically around the fence in regards to if it was permitted or unpermitted?
That's subject to the site plan review, and that's what we're reviewing at staff level administratively.
So was the fence built with a permit?
This came before my time. I've been here for about 6 months, but my understanding is staff has been working with them, I guess, through the 2024. There was concerns with the previous fence, from what I understand. I guess there may have been a more dilapidated fence that was there before. Staff had required that that fence be replaced with a block wall. There were concerns with EPA because in order to install a block wall there, you have to have footings that go into the ground. And EPA is concerned with any type of excavation, trenching, or borings happening on that site because of the condition. And so again, this is sort of beyond my time, but my understanding is that fence that was dilapidated was eventually replaced, and that's what you have now. That being said, it's still subject to the site plan review that we're reviewing. We're sending those out to the other departments for review. We know that Public Works has comments. They're working on Rail Street, making some improvements there. And so, it's going through the process, but those will be reviewed. As the applicant mentioned earlier, I guess there's some areas there that has barbed wire, and they had mentioned that that barbed wire would be removed.
And the other question was regarding the 10-foot setback. Is that met, that city requirement?
So we are working with Public Works. They do have certain requirements for improvements along the street that we're working with, that the applicant will have to meet prior to getting approval, or it will be conditioned on the plan. In regards to our code, our zoning code, it does require that there's landscape screening between the fence or wall and the street.
Yeah, I'm just posing those because those are questions that the community has specifically around the fencing, and I know you were going to specifically address those. So that's the only reason I'm bringing those up.
Yeah. Again, that's going to be reviewed at the staff level. It's done administratively. We'll do a full review and make a decision on the project. We'll be working with the applicant in order to, during the review process.
Maybe this is a question for you, Greg. You often hear this administrative process, like what's the purview, like what's the scope, what, in regards to what can go through staff as opposed to what requires a planning commission or city council input?
Yeah, that's all, actually, it's set out in, I want to say, chapter 53 of the municipal
It's a
code.
test. It's a test.
I may be wrong, but it does set up a hierarchy of different types of zoning questions, and design review is, up until about 4 years ago, it was a two-sentence description, and then former city manager Chris Jeffers didn't like how vague it was, and it provided no guidance. So if you look at that section now for design review, it's a very long, about a half a page paragraph that talks about the things that when the city code says this does not require a conditional use permit because it's permitted by right, but the staff has to review how it's designed to make sure that it matches zoning requirements. That gives them a lot of guidance, and that's really the difference. Things that are permitted by right can still be reviewed by the staff to make sure that they're designing it in accordance with the requirements of the zone, versus discretionary uses. That's when it comes to you guys for the first decision, when you have to balance the impacts of a proposed development on the neighborhood, and that's usually in a conditional use permit situation. You still have a bite of the apple if the design review decision is appealed, because you are designated as the appellate body for that. But at the initial level, design review pertains to those things that are permitted, the uses that are permitted by right under the zoning code, versus you guys are the decision makers where it's a conditional use permit, and the landowner doesn't have the absolute right to do it until he satisfies you guys. So that's where the dividing line is.
What about when it's something like the whole fencing issue that doesn't meet the zoning requirements? Doesn't that come back to us, or?
Well, no, that's decided at the staff level. If they look at the design and they say, here, we're going to put, a barbed wire fence here, that's when the staff rejects it and says, no, you can't design it that way. And if the staff says no, then they can't get a building permit to put it up. So it's, that's a more basic, check the box, does this development meet the requirements, versus a policy decision where you guys have a little bit more lofty job of determining, is this use that may be allowed but is not allowed by right, is this good for the community or bad for the community? That's where you guys come in. They're just like, did you meet all the requirement? No, you didn't. Go back and give us a new design, or else you're not going to get your building permit to build it.
And the only reason I mention that is because I guess in this process here, it was the administrative review, right? It was granted, but there was a fence that was built without having a permit, at least appears to be the case now. Is the temporary certificate of occupancy, is that a way to circumvent existing processes?
It is. It's not a way to circumvent it, because it is temporary. It expires at some point, and they need a permanent certificate of occupancy to occupy. It is more of a way to align, maybe the building department did its job very quickly because it only had a few things to look at, versus the planning department has a long laundry list of zoning conditions that it needs to check. So the building department say, okay, we'll issue you a temporary one, and we'll give you a certain period of time for you to finish the work that the planning department needs to do. And at some point, hopefully, the design meets your guys' criteria, and you bless it. They get the design built in a way that complies with the code, and then once the permits are issued, then a permanent certificate of occupancy can be issued. But it's just really, it's a way of aligning the schedules of the different city departments.
Does that design process come, or design review come to us at all?
On appeal, if there's an appeal of a decision made at the staff level, then it comes to you, yeah.
Because I think there was a business off of, off of a state, right, off of the railroad tracks, where there was like some conversation around like curb appeal, setbacks, I think the recommendation on like the siding of the property, like all that, eventually, it actually came to us. So I'm just kind of curious to see like, where's the guideline?
I think something like that would probably come to you where the staff made a decision that, you need to do these things in order to comply with the code, and that's it, and perhaps the applicant was unhappy with that. For example, the staff has discretion a 10% discretion on setbacks. Maybe there's a situation where the applicant wants the staff to grant that exception, and the staff says, no, it's not appropriate in this case. That would be one where the applicant could appeal and come to you guys and say, the staff is being too harsh on me, can you please allow me to do what I've applied to? So that would be the type of situation where you're looking at aesthetics and how close are you complying with the zoning requirements and stuff like that.
If I can just add, I think there was a question Commissioner Ruiz had sort of asked earlier in the meeting about what to do if you wanted to change the code. City Council is a legislative body, so if you wanted to have any type of uses that are, either permitted or conditionally permitted, that's, I guess, at the review with the City Council, they'd have to approve an ordinance, consider the item if there's any, uses out there that you want to, upgrade from being permitted by right to, requiring a conditional use permit. I mean, there's a number of reasons why you do that. One is to be, I guess, business friendly. Maybe there's certain uses that aren't really concerned by the community, that they'd rather have staff do them, that staff can do it a lot more quicker than having it go to planning commission. And then there are also uses that the community might be really concerned about that you may want to upgrade to have a conditional use permit. But again, that's done at the city council level, them being the legislative body. There's also certain uses that come down from the state. The state is requiring cities to produce more housing. And they're requiring us to approve accessory dwelling units, ADUs. That's something that's fairly new. Maybe a decade or so ago, it was illegal to convert a garage into a living space. And now with the new ADU laws, people are able to convert their garages to ADUs. And that's just something, that happens, I guess that states made cities do. And so there's examples of where rules change every now and then because of different needs or different requirements that come down either from city council or from the state.
Just one comment. I think when you look at the administrative review, clearly, you're the subject matter experts, right? But there's also a key element that's not included in that process, and that's community input. So when you make decisions that might not be supported by the greater community, it doesn't give the community an opportunity unless you go through, I think John was nice enough to communicate that, you go through an appeal process, but at that point, it's after the fact. So I don't know if other cities have some kind of administrative review report that's provided to, whether it's city council or to the planning commission, to kind of get an idea of like what's happening in our community, because I think that sheds light on a lot of work in the development that's happening within our community. Ultimately, you live this every day. We're just visiting. So I think that provides good transparency, I would say, because I think that's critical as we move forward. There's been a lot of questions in regards to, providing the city city residents more information and transparency. And I think there is that fine line in regards to you don't want to slow down the process, right? Because, ultimately, time is money. But on the flip side, it's important to keep the community informed.
True. But you also have to consider that you need certainty from the property owner standpoint, which is the whole reason that the city has a general plan. You don't want to put a property owner in a position of, the particular property is zoned to allow this thing, but I may not get to do it because I've got to go before a public hearing and hope that there are not a lot of loud voices from neighbors who don't want it. I know it's a long process because they don't update the general plan more than every couple of decades, but there is an exhaustive public input process when the general plan is being formulated. It's like, okay, we're proposing, we're going to have housing over here, we're going to have industrial over here, we're going to have schools over here, and the public does get, at that point, input on how they want the city generally designed. So yeah, it might be frustrating if you find yourself living next to an industrial zone and a new industrial use goes in there, but to some degree, we have to spread uses out. We can't have just houses, we can't have just industrial, we have to have a mix, and that's what the general plan does, and that's what the staff is guided by, and it's, you've seen it, it's a lengthy document, it's hundreds of pages, and it's full of goals and directives that are the best way of guiding people when you put together a document that you know is going to be the direction in which the city is going to be developed for the next 20 years. So it's a tough job, but it's a big document that these folks look at in trying to provide transparency and directive and let everybody know here's the way the city is going to develop, and we're trying to stick to what the electorate approved when we adopted the general plan. So
Yeah, it's a fine line, and I appreciate your explanation because I do see the need for transparency and public participation, but at the same time, I feel dismayed that there wasn't residential community input or much residential community input tonight. We did see, the neighboring businesses come and speak, and to me, that kind of is signaling that maybe people aren't very concerned about toy yards. I mean, we'll see at the council meeting once this goes to them, and if there is a CEQA process, but at the same time, I do have trust in our planning department as it is now. I do see the efforts that they put in, and so I'm hoping and trusting that you all do.
And we do try to get public input. State law only requires us, whenever we have a hearing like this, to send notices to the residents within 300 feet, and the city has changed its ordinance to require notices to go within a 1,000-foot radius. So we're trying to bring in people, and every time you log onto the city's website, you can't be on there more than 10 seconds before you get a pop-up inviting you to join the city's alert, which sends everybody notices for meetings like this. So we're doing what we can to foster public input.
Any additional staff comments? Okay, moving on along, Planning Commission comments? Okay, great. On that note, thank you for all your hard work, staff. Thank you for your commitment to our city. Thank you to our city business here for continuing to do business in the city of Southgate. You are a big part of our success moving forward, so thank you for your commitment. The only thing I think as Commissioner Reese and all of our commissioners probably subscribe to is, the importance of making sure that we continue to be transparent when some of these matters come to the forefront and provide as much detail as possible. The community does ask questions, and sometimes we just happen to be the vehicle to kind of bring those to your attention. So those questions might not be personal questions, but they might be questions that our residents have in regards to specific projects. So we thank you for taking the time to look into those, and we have a ton of opportunity ahead of us, and I can't thank you all, my fellow commissioners here, for all your time and commitment and service to the city of Southgate. So on that note, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:59. Do we have to do a roll call here, or we're good? We're done. Done.
That's why I said early.